Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. So for today, we're going to take a look at Temporal Tower level 50 again, and that's because the recent update actually added some Temporal Disturbance into this specific floor. So this could be something for us to talk about. Now here is the Temporal Disturbance, Fast Retaliation. In battle against Phobetor, Espers who break its life shield will receive damage instantly and be stunned for one turn. So this obviously applies to the followers as well, which means that if you attack the follower and you break the life shield, you are going to be stunned. But one way around it is obviously to bring immunity, which is why I'm using Changpu over here. Now you also might be wondering, why am I not using Gabriel? Why am I using Changpu instead? Well, for two reasons, right? Number one, Changpu is a healer, and number two, Gabriel does insane amounts of AoE attacks, which is not very good, especially when the life shields are not present on the boss, or on the followers, I should say. Now I know I talked about not 6-starring your Changpu, but for today's video, because I want to make it as free to play as possible, I will definitely need to 6-star my Changpu, which is what I did. And for most cases, I wouldn't even recommend you bringing Changpu because she just don't bring as much as, like, let's say a Clara or a Hengrie or maybe even a Fabrice. But what you're going to observe over here is probably the thickest Changpu that you've ever seen in your life. Anyway, let's see how useful she is, and her main purpose is to grant us immunity buff during the life shield state. So before we go ahead and break any life shields in this fight, we need to make sure that we have immunity. If not, we are going to lose a precious turn, and if your Espers are slower than mine, unfortunately that may also mean that your DPS Espers may not be able to move again to break the other life shield. So I cannot stress how important it is to have immunity, and immunity at the right time. Now another thing is I prefer Suhua over Dahlia because Suhua grants a defensive buff, whereas in this team that I'm using right now, I do not have any other defensive buffers, so Suhua is always going to be a mainstay for me. Now as for Berenice, she is probably my perfect pick for Temporal Tower 50. In fact, I do feel like she is the perfect Esper to bring. So her first skill lands defense break on the boss or on whichever target that you want to destroy a little bit faster. And her second skill reduces AP, which is excellent against Phobetor. And finally, her third skill gives your entire team a shield buff with regeneration, and it is incredible support. So now moving on to Sander and Tang Yun, I feel like these two Espers are probably one of the best few Espers in partaking Temporal Tower level 50 because they deal a lot of single target damage. And Sander is just godlike here, right? He has AP reduction, he has slow, and he has stuns whenever that is useful. And it is incredibly useful, especially in the second wave where we need to stun certain Espers. Oh, and before I forget, let me backtrack a little bit to Suhua. Now another reason why Suhua is so good here is because she directs all the attacks from single target damage to herself as long as the enemies are Shimmer type. And all the Espers in the boss wave are Shimmer type, which means that they are only going to direct their single target damage towards Suhua, which is a lot of support for your team. So in other words, maybe a Lin Xiao might not even be that optimal here anymore, as well for several reasons, right? Number one, Lin Xiao does AoE attack damage, which is a necessity for her to function. And obviously number two, she's a Shimmer type, which means that attacks will be directed towards her. So oddly enough, Lin Xiao is actually not so good over here, but well, that truly only applies to new players. So that's the introduction. We're going to skip wave 1 and we're going to go straight into wave 2. So the most important thing over here is to stun the Raven. I mean, it doesn't really hurt if you do not stun her, or let's say you do not target her at the start, because she will be the last moving Esper on the enemy's lineup, which means that if you drop an immunity at the start, you are still going to prevent the AoE defense break that Lin Xiao is going to deal to your team. So it's really not the end of the world if you fail to stun the Raven, which is something that happened to me over here. Just make sure that your immunity buffer is going to take the first turn and you're okay. So one way or another, I was able to deal with the Raven without her taking a turn, which is great. Now after the Raven is down, your next target should either be Lin Xiao or Biondina, but I do feel like Biondina is probably the main threat here because the Lin Xiao will just continue punching our Suhua due to typing. So it's not so urgent that you deal with the Lin Xiao. Maybe you can probably choose to stun her, maybe you can choose to reduce her AP, right control a little bit, maybe you can reduce her attack power, but priority, I think, should go to the Biondina because she has the potential to one-shot your Sander if RNG goes like awry for you. So what I mean is that if Biondina removes the buffs on your Sander, for example, you're kind of screwed because she's going to attack your Sander. But lucky enough for me, the enemy's Biondina is currently on cooldown, which means that I survive her normal attack. But that's kind of the gist over here, so just make sure that you deal with the Biondina and you should be okay. Then once the Biondina is down, you can either go for the Unas or you can go for the Lin Xiao, whichever, and just leave the Essenath for last. So now we're gonna move on to the boss itself, Phobetor. So the main way for you to kill him as soon as you can is to land defense breaks and reduce his AP. So the thing is, it is entirely possible that you can reduce Phobetor's AP like constantly all the way to 0. So Changpu's first skill does that as well. Changpu's first skill can reduce AP, and Berenice can reduce AP, Sender can reduce AP as well. So assuming you have enough accuracy or enough luck, enough RNG, right? Then you could technically kill Phobetor without him even taking a single turn. And this is a very common strategy if you see certain players using Sienna on their team, or using Espers like Longmian, or even Pritzker with his insane 30% AP absorption on his first skill. It is extremely common to see very effective AP controlling teams. But if you decide to go with the team that I'm using over here, the strategy is going to be slightly different. We are not going to rely too much on AP control because our accuracy is just simply not enough, and I don't really want to rely too much on RNG. So instead, we are going to set some hard boundaries and some rules that we're going to follow, which means that we need to deal with the life shield. We cannot just cheese the boss by reducing his AP to 0 constantly. So the ideal situation here is to drop your immunity buff from your Changpu as soon as the boss life shield comes up. Then this would be the opportunity for you to attack both of the followers and remove their life shield without having to suffer a stun. But in my situation over here, I kind of messed up. I kind of forgot about it. So I went ahead and removed the life shield without dropping an immunity buff. So that was slightly dangerous to me. And as you can see, my Tang Yun got stunned, which also means that my Sender is probably going to get stunned because I do not have my immunity up at this point in time. So I kind of wasted one entire turn. I could have used this opportunity to probably drop Phobetor down by another 10 to 15% more HP. But honestly, as long as you can get him down to 50%, or as long as you can outlast one of his rotations like this, there is absolutely no excuse that you cannot defeat him entirely. Well, I mean, it is entirely possible that your max HP goes down and goes down and goes down, and therefore you're not able to continue performing as you would. But assuming that your DPS Espers are strong enough to get rid of the life shield, which is also one of the major requirements here, then you really shouldn't have any problems at all. And as you can see, this is how you deal with Phobetor. So now he's in a stun state because he has no life shields on his followers to absorb. So we're just going to take this opportunity to do whatever we can. We can try to reduce his AP, we can try to reduce his defense, try to do as much damage as we can. Anything goes, so basically we're just trying to slap him as hard as possible right now. And that's kind of like the end of the fight because I've successfully completed one rotation. So I can do another rotation. That is definitely not a problem. So there is really nothing much I can say over here. Everything that you need to know I have explained in this video. Hopefully this video serves some purpose in helping you defeat Temporal Tower level 50, like let's say for the first time, or maybe if you were able to do it before but now you're stuck because of the Temporal Disturbance here. Then hopefully I gave you some insight, especially in using some very cheap Espers. But like let's say you do not have a Sender, which I think is probably the only Esper over here that is not entirely free to play, then what I might do is to probably run a Fabrice instead, because Fabrice can give your Tang Yun extra attacks and Fabrice is completely free to play. You can fuse him. So Fabrice duplicates your DPS, which is what's probably necessary in the life shield state. Which also means that you may not need Changpu because Fabrice brings the immunity. So therefore, instead of Changpu, you can bring a Hengrie, you can bring a Clara, any of your healers. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content. Now with that said, this has been Daddy Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Oh, and I inadvertently got my faster timing over here.